as I was reading the words to this parsha, I remember Rabbi would always say he would get so excited when he was reading it, and when you're preparing it, it's very different than when you're listening to someone else who spends so much time preparing it. But for me, it was a very powerful parasha. Now, last week we read Mishpatim, and it ended dramatically. Moshe was ascending Mount Sinai in a cloud of smoke, and he would be handed the 10 Commandments. Now, this parasha begins with "and," so we would think that it's continuing in the same vein, but instead it jumps ahead to the detailed account of the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. In great detail, but that is a discussion for another day. I had something else in mind for today. Now we read the first part, right away we begin with Exodus 21, verse 1, and it begins, "And the Lord spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel to take to me Terumah." Now, our rabbi of blessed memory spoke to us about the difference between taking and giving. When we take something, it infers bringing something that we already have. In other words, God provided the Israelites with everything that they would need to bring to him, to take to him. Everything used to build a Mishkan, which is given in great detail, was supplied to them by the Egyptians. They literally paid them to leave. They didn't buy anything. They needed to bring them, but they needed to bring them to God with a willing heart, as it says in the second part of the same verse, Exodus 25:1. "From every man whose heart makes him willing, you shall take my offering." If they didn't have a willing heart, God didn't want it. The same holds true today. God is not interested in us giving to him out of a sense of sacrifice. He sees our hearts. He knows our intentions, our kavanah. When we give a gift to anyone, to the congregation, to people inside our community, whether they're here or abroad, to friends or family, we need to search our hearts and make sure we're giving them for the right reasons. Giving or taking with a willing heart suggests that it is not a sacrifice. We're not giving up anything. In fact, when we give with a willing heart, it elevates us at a spiritual level. Our rabbi taught us that the word terumah, translated as offering, contains the Hebrew root rum, which means elevate. He always spoke of our walk with God as being on an upward spiral, and we are elevated when we give with a willing heart. The opposite is true of stingy people or those who have religious pride. They never feel blessed. Rather, they are the ones who demand sacrifice and martyrdom from others. So what is our motivation for giving? Anything to anyone. Is it to show off? To see our name on some plaque in lights as leverage to receive something in return? Or even out of a sense of guilt or obligation? If so, let's not expect to earn any brownie points in heaven. We cannot hide our intentions from our God. Now, this is followed by a very special verse. Ve'asuli migdash v'shachanti betocham, and make me a sanctuary, and I will dwell among them. When we read all the details that it took to build a sanctuary, we might wonder, why did our Creator need such an elaborate dwelling? Well, the truth is, he didn't. He doesn't need anything from us. We're the ones who need everything from him. He cannot be contained in a small sanctuary or in the temple that King Solomon built in Jerusalem, nor in Herod's temple that was larger, nor even in the future temple described in Ezekiel, which, according to our sages, will be much greater than all these. He never said that he would dwell in it. he said he would dwell among them. But there are conditions for him dwelling among us, as it says in this week's Haftarah in 1 Kings 6:13. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and I will never forsake my people, Israel. Again, but this verse is preceded by these words. And the Lord came to Solomon saying, as for this house which you are building, if you will walk in my statutes, my chukim, and execute my judgments, my mishpatim, and keep all my commandments, my mitzvot, to walk in them, then I will fulfill my promise to you, which I gave to your father David. The mitzvot, the chukim, the mishpatim are all contained within the 10 Commandments, the greatest gift that humanity could ever receive. If we guard these in our hearts and live accordingly, we will be elevated to the level that we can have our Creator dwell among us. If we do not, He allows us to experience the consequences of our actions. That is the cost of having free will. It's not about being holy, about having a halo on our heads or being a saint. It's about obedience. The Torah goes into amazing details for the design for the sanctuary, which he showed Moshe during the time he was receiving the tablets. It also details the construction of an ark, which would be covered with pure gold that doesn't rust or erode and would protect the precious treasure that would be housed within it. What would be placed within the ark? Ha'adut asher eten elecha, the testimony that I shall give you. In other words, the 10 Commandments carved in stone by the finger of God. Now, after they covered it, they put on the gold ark cover and placed the testimony, the tablets within it, God said, I love this, and there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the ark cover, between the 2 cheruvim, the cherubs, which are upon the ark of the testimony. I wondered, why 2 cheruvim, 2 cherubs? Then it occurred to me that perhaps they are part of the theme of room being elevated. The cheruvim represent those who dwell in the spiritual realm. They were guarding God's treasure, his treasure chest, the ark, which contains his special gift to us, the tablets. Strangely enough, this verse brought this question up in my mind. What is the best form of government? How did I jump from one thing to that? Well, mankind has gone to war time and again to impose their types of government upon the world. Here are some forms of government. We live in one, supposedly democracy, socialism, communism, oligarchy, monarchy, and fascism, among those, just a few. In 1 Samuel 8, when the prophet's own sons took bribes and perverted justice, the elders of Israel said to him, you are old, and your sons are not walking in your ways. So make us a king to judge us, like all the nations. Samuel was displeased, but prayed to the Lord, who said to Samuel, listen to the voice of the people, for they have not rejected you. They have rejected me, that I should not be king over them. What type of government would be best to serve mankind? Well, that verse in Exodus 25:22 answered that question for me. You see, Moshe had set up a system on the advice of his father-in-law Yitro, where men who feared God, men of truth, hating unjust gain, loving justice, would be able to rule the people, as well as the Kohanim who would hear directly from the Creator when they asked for guidance, when they stood in front of that ark with those cherubim there, they would hear. He would speak to them. He would meet and speak to them there. We know from the Torah that both men and women have heard his voice directly. He spoke to Moses. He spoke with Moses face to face. But how can we apply this to our lives today? Does God speak directly to us? It's true that some of us are attuned to hear his voice, but the world, for the most part, is not listening. Once again, like Pharaoh, the gods of this world are in position to do battle with the God of the universe. Leaders of countries, leaders of technology, of medicine, of pharmacology, of education, finance, environment, all gathered to meet to decide the fate of this planet. We know how the first king of Israel, Shaul, behaved, and how his kingship was wrenched from him because he would not listen to the voice of our Creator. Do these leaders listen to the voice of the Creator? How do we listen to him today? We no longer have the golden ark of the covenant containing the physical tablets handed to Moshe. We no longer have a temple or a mishkan. We no longer have people who we know are God's chosen prophets, although we do have their words. Most of today's prophets have chosen themselves. But what we do have has stood the test of time, and that is the 10 Commandments and the Torah, which delineates their application to our lives, and the rest of the Tanakh with its many stories of people who listened and obeyed and those who didn't. The question is, do you and I listen and obey? Do we realize that the God who spoke to Moses has not changed? We are the ones who have changed him out of expediency. I am filled with a sense of desperation when I watch world news, wars, rumors of wars, natural disasters, corruption at every level of government, immorality at levels not seen in my lifetime, and on and on. In the Israel that I love, protesters are filling the streets and surrounding the Knesset, the government, targeting the coalition moves to restructure aspects of Israel's Supreme Court's power. This reminds me of the days when Yeshua spoke out not only against the Pharisees, but also the politicians, the Sanhedrin, who were in bed with Rome. That is why he was arrested and killed. Sinat chinam, free hatred, that caused the destruction of the temple and our expulsion from Jerusalem is alive again. The consequence is that our enemies are on the rise. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. This is not only happening in Israel. Yeshua wanted his people, my people, to return to the basic Torah, to biblical Judaism, not to the Judaism that places such burdens on the people that they are turned away from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or any other religion for that matter. Yeshua's role was to entreat our people to return to their role of being a light to the nations, given to us by our Creator. He gave us that role. How can God dwell among us, shachanti b'tocham, in the environment that we are creating? God will not stand by and watch for very long as his creation corrupts itself. Thankfully, there is still a remnant of those who love him. And that, I believe, is what is staying his hand from completely destroying us, as he did with Sodom and Gomorrah. The Creator is the only one who can rule over us in justice, in mercy, and provide us with protection from our enemies. Our part is to be loyal to him and obedient to his commandments. Our Creator showed Moshe the pattern for the earthly tabernacle with elements of the divine clearly visible. It would house the golden ark, God's treasure chest protected by the cherubim. What a beautiful picture of those who are God's Am Segula, his treasured people. We who are made in his image house within us the gift that was in the ark, his 10 commandments. The realm of the spiritual, depicted by the cherubim, guards us as we obey them and walk with our God. No one said it would be easy to follow him. We would be tried and tested. We would want to run in the other direction, and at times we would look like fools and be mocked. But when our ears and our eyes are opened to listen to his voice, and the blessings cannot be counted. During these coming days and months, maybe years, who knows, as we watch the increase of immorality to the point of sheer wickedness and immorality on this planet, let us not lose hope. We know who is in control, who is protecting us, and we know the ending, and it is glorious. We are God's Am Segula, his treasured people. The 10 commandments are the treasure he gave us. We belong together to share with the world. Without them, the world is lost. So listen to that again. We are God's treasures, his treasured people, you and I. And the commandments are the treasure that he gave us. We belong together. One needs to be with the other. Without them, we're lost. The world is lost. Remember that verse we read before? V'yasuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham. It's a beautiful song with those words taken from this. V'yasuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham ve'anachnu nivarech ya me'ata ve'ad olam. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. May our lives be worthy to have our God live among us. And when they're not, let's turn back to him and be willing to be elevated by listening to his voice, by loving our neighbors as we love ourselves. Are you and I willing to be elevated by listening to his voice? Shabbat Shalom.